Excellent. All right. So what I've just done is I'm just recording this session as well to be offline, so we can have a higher resolution stream when we play this back. So what we're going to do is we'll get started in a second. Just a couple of things for people that are new to YouTube. Oops, sorry. I'm just going to apologise, and I'm going to wizard. Okay, sorry about that. Joys of live streaming and my dog. So I just wanted to get the barking out of the way. So I'm back. Sorry. So what we are going to be doing here is using YouTube live streaming. So for those of you that haven't used it before, I was just telling you my volume might be a bit low. I'm just using a mic. I'll try and increase that volume up a bit. Apologies for the audio quality on these at the moment. I am getting some better equipment, getting some mics and some headsets and stuff, so hopefully our future sessions will sound quite a lot better. So with this design thinking session we're doing today, like I said, it's on YouTube live streaming, so it is about a 20 to 30 second delay from what you may type in chat and what you're hearing to what I'm doing here. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat on the right there, and I'll go through them as I go through. So yeah, we're going to run this a little bit differently to how we run this in the Tech School for Teachers. Normally this is about a 3-hour PD. So what I'm going to do here, because a lot of it requires a fair bit of back and forth between me as the facilitator and you as the people in the session. It also requires you to talk to other people, all those things which are frowned upon at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through design thinking. I'm going to go through the slides. This will be a shorter session, so I'm going to probably try and cap it at about 30 minutes, going through what design thinking is and how we do it at the Tech School. And then in the remaining 30 minutes that you've got, or longer if you have it, I'm going to send you a link to the slides that I want you to kind of go through as well at your own pace. Now, again, it's going to be a little bit different because you don't have, I guess, a person to kind of work with or bounce off, but we'll deal with it as best we can in our new kind of working environment. So again, let me know that you can hear me okay and that you can see me okay. So what we'll do as well is, like I said, I'm recording this for offline viewing. So this video will automatically go up once it's done, this live video, but I'll also have a high resolution video which I'm recording from my computer, which will be probably a little bit clearer to see as well. So that's going to be the plan. So I'm going to get started. So design thinking, basically what design thinking is, I might just jump straight into present mode down here. So I'm going to click up. So what I'm doing here is I'm using this, like I said, the slides that we use in the Tech School, but there's obviously a lot more talking that goes on with this. But I'll try to explain what these are, what the steps are, what the process is. So then when you do this yourself, then you'll probably have a greater understanding of how it all works. Now, again, hopefully my fan speeding up there is not going to affect my volume. So what we'll start off with is, I guess, we'll start off with design thinking and why we do it. I'm also I might just get rid of my head from here because I think it's going to be more important that you focus on the slides and you don't focus on me. So I'm just actually going to turn me off for now, and I'm going to jump just to the slides. All right, so that way they're front and center. So design thinking. Okay, so design thinking is a way of thinking that we use at the Tech School. Okay, so when students come in, they will use this design thinking method to work through whatever that day's workshop is going to be. So if it's going to be coding or advanced manufacturing or anything really, we really use design thinking as a way for them to kind of go through that process. It's really important. And so what we look at it as is basically like a team-based problem-solving process, really. So the students will work in teams. They'll work in teams of, say, 4 or 5. And that's probably really important because we want them working together. We want them bouncing ideas off each other. We want them giving themselves, constructive criticism to really kind of help them work through this process. So it's a team-based activity. Problem solving, like we said, they're going to have a problem. The problem they will choose, which I'll explain a little bit later. But it's all driven by empathy, which we'll talk about soon. So empathy is super important to why we kind of use this. But also we kind of encourage failure as well. We tell them that we want them to fail really fast, right? We want them to fail as fast as possible so they can, I guess, learn from that experience, okay? So the other thing I'm going to do, just because I've got a few monitors going here, I'm just going to bring my recording software just up the top here so I can just monitor a few things. I just want to monitor chat. Awesome. And I'm just going to monitor my mic. What I'm going to do is I might just put my mic up just a little bit and see if that helps. Okay. All right. So let's head back to my stream. Okay, so that's kind of how design thinking works, okay? So what we kind of do is it's before they can basically come up with solutions to the problems that they're facing. What we want them to do is basically empathize with a person, empathize with a group of people, empathize with a business, whatever it's going to be. We want them to get to know who that is, who they're working with, and what that problem is that they're going to solve. They will kind of figure out through this empathy process, okay, by understanding who these people are, okay? So I guess it's kind of like that whole putting yourself in someone's shoes kind of thing, which is what the students, respond with straight away. They kind of understand the idea of empathy, but actually doing it in practice can be a little bit different. So that's what we kind of do. And from there, from basically empathizing, okay, they're going to start to then define. So define is they're going to then say what they believe this person's problem is, okay, or organization or business or whatever it's going to be. By getting to know them, the group, the students are going to say, you know what, I think this is the problem, or I think this is the problem that they've got, okay? So they decide it themselves, which can be a bit tricky. Then we go, I'll use my mouse so I can actually point at a few things. Then we go into ideate, which is, I think, the fun stuff, right? So ideate is coming up with ideas. So they've talked to their person, or they've empathized with this person. They've kind of figured out what they think the problem is, and now it's time to solve it. So they'll come up with a whole bunch of ideas that's going to solve that problem. They think might solve that problem. Okay, they could be, serious, focused, technical ideas, or they could be completely crazy. That's fine, right? They're just ideas. They'll then choose one of those ideas and get into prototyping. And prototyping, I guess, is probably the main part of the tech school that we really like. That's the building. Okay, that could be starting off with cardboard and paper, drawing sketches, or it could be jumping onto a laser cutter and starting to cut out some things. It could be, 3D printing. It could be CNC machining. So it's basically building something. All right, they're building their solution. Then they're going to test it out. They're going to see if it works, right? If it does, awesome. Okay. If not, that's okay, because we talk about that failure. Go back to one of these stages and see where you can make some changes. Maybe they'll go back to the prototype phase and make some different prototypes and test those. Or maybe they'll go all the way to ideate and go, that idea didn't work. Let's try a different one. And then we'll kind of prototype and we'll test that as well. So I have it here in a bit of a linear fashion, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. But it doesn't always have to work like that. You could jump from testing something out, going all the way back to empathizing with your user and maybe having a chat with them again about your product and saying, hey, did this suit your needs? So that's a real kind of rough overview. So what I'm going to do as we go through here is I'm going to kind of show you these steps in a little bit more detail going through these slides. I'm going to get you to kind of have a look at it. And then, like I said, after the session, in your own time, over the next, few days or weeks or however time you've got, go through those slides and actually see if you can kind of do a session yourself. Or even better, see if you can do a session with somebody else, which would be cool. I could really see this kind of live streaming working well by working with other people in that regard. So what we have here, these slides were designed around coding as the key part of it. So we were going to actually teach students and teachers some coding skills and get them to use design thinking, and those coding skills I've just learned to actually come up with their solution. So that's what our design thinking coding workshop is as well. So don't stress about the coding side of things. Okay, that is just a theme that I'm running with this design thinking workshop. So you can ignore coding altogether for this one. What we have here is, some examples of how it's been working in the past. These are actually pretty old pictures. I think that might even be Robbie there, looking very young. So design thinking, basically we've got it with industry as well as students. So we do it with students all the time, obviously, and we can see some of their examples here. We can see some of their ideas, some of their prototypes, okay, some of their prototypes in action. We can see them testing this stuff out. We can see how it works. We can also see them presenting this work as well, which is something I'll talk about a little bit later. But of course, this works perfectly with industry. We can see industry doing this exact same thing as well, okay? Coming up with ideas, coming up with prototypes. We can see here, again, a prototype. It's just, what is that? It's just Lego and cardboard, right? But it's still a prototype. Or here we have some just post-it notes, but again, still a prototype. A lot of discussion, a lot of listening, a lot of talking. Okay, so that's kind of how we're looking at it working in the textbook. So I'm going to skip past these 2 slides because they're for coding, which I'm not going to worry about. We chatted about that. So I'm going to jump straight into here. So this is, the first stage. Okay, so this is empathy. And so what we like to do is I like to break empathy up into kind of two different stages. Okay, I like to look at it at a kind of an interview and research stage, and then at a bit of a dig deeper stage. Okay, so this is kind of how we're going to go through this today. So I'm going to explain each of these slides, so then when you see these, you can kind of understand them a bit more on your end when you kind of go through this process. So I guess interview and research is super important. So that is, I guess, starting to gain empathy for your user. Okay, starting to get to know who they are. Observation is really important. Engaging with them is really important. Okay, having that user in front of you is great. And of course, like I said, we can't do that today. But having that user there that you can interview, that you can ask questions about, is really, really helpful to start to gain empathy. So again, we do that with the students. We get them to either interview themselves, talk to people. If we're lucky enough to have industry in on that day, they can interview industry. I know we had Tallis in last year, which was great. We had students kind of talking and interviewing a bunch of engineers and learning from them as well. So that's where I've got that first stage, just kind of just an interview kind of process. What I've got down here is, just getting to know them first, right? Before you start to try and dig into some really deep questions about them and try to find out, what's wrong with them. Maybe just some real simple questions, like get to know them. What do you like doing? Hobbies, those kind of things. Kind of get to know them as a person first, right? And that's our interview stage there. In terms of time, I think this would probably take, maybe 5 to 10 minutes per person to kind of do that interview, get to know them. All right. And then after we've done that, I ask everyone to kind of like dig a little bit deeper now. So now that you've got to know them a bit more, right, as a person, you feel a little bit more comfortable with them. Now is your time to kind of like dig a little bit deeper, okay, and find out a little bit more about them and kind of more, I guess, those interesting topics you're trying to go for, like their motivations, their feelings, emotions, like those kind of things, like really dig deeper into some issues that you may have started to hear them bring up. Okay, I've also got you to ask them why a lot as well. So always be asking why. So for example, if you are having a chat with them and you discover, let's say we're talking about coding, and they're like, oh, I can't stand using computers, right? Like instead of just going, okay, that's great, and moving on, ask them why. Like, why is that? Why don't they like using computers? Okay, maybe it's a thing where they feel they haven't got enough skills or knowledge in computers, so it's an education thing. Maybe they've just had a bad experience with a computer, right? Maybe one fell on them one day and they didn't like that. Maybe they just don't like the way keyboards work. Maybe they're so used to using their hands, they like tactile stuff. Like, so really find out why. Like, find out what is these reasons as you go through. So that's kind of like our dig deeper. All right, really, really dig deep into them. Find out what's going on. If you can make them cry, that's awesome. All right, but we really want to find out their feelings and motivations in certain areas. So with this, of course, you kind of want to have a chat with them and you want to find out what that issue is. Like, what are you looking for? So with students, this is probably a tough one just to give them, blank. But with students, what we like to do is we try and give them some context. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give them maybe a design brief, which I might show you a little bit later, which has, a user profile, which has some information about people that we're working with, a little bit of their background, so they can start to dig a little bit deeper into that. So that's kind of like our first stage, right? So what I might do to kind of make this make more sense is let's give you an example now, right? I'll give you an example and I'll use that as I work through this process. So this is probably going out to teachers. So why don't we say we're going to try and solve a problem here. What I want to do is I want to find out your experience with live streaming, right? With this kind of like streaming process, which everyone has to do for the next term. Right? How are you finding it? How are you finding doing remote learning? How are you finding doing these virtual classes? Right? I want to find out your problems there. Okay, so let's just use that as our theme as we go through. So first up, we'll interview. I'll chat with you. I'll find out what you like, what you've been doing, just your personal kind of stuff. Then I might dig a little bit deeper. I might ask you, so how are you going in the classroom? How are you finding home learning and live streaming? Do you enjoy it? Do you like it? Are you liking these kind of weird random hours? Is it working for you? Do you think the students are learning? Do you think this is going to have a positive impact on them? Okay, so these are the questions you want to ask. We're trying to dig a little bit deeper. And of course, you will give me your responses. You might say, I love it. I love home learning. I'll ask you why. And you might talk about, well, I really like being able to kind of like see them, not face to face, but like be able to teach them anytime. I like to be able to be agile and change this kind of thing. So you might say, I really don't like home learning. I don't like, I miss that contact, that kind of, that personal touch that I can give students when I'm in the room as well. So that kind of dig deeper phase is really important. And what you'll do is you'll write a lot of this down. Okay, you'll be taking notes as you go through this process. So you'll be taking notes in your interview phase. You'll be taking notes as you dig deeper, right? You want to write all this stuff down so you can kind of remember it as you go. All right. I've got a timer here. Don't worry about that, of course, because we're not doing this live, so we'll go through. All right. And 10 recipes we can make with fudge. So then, after you've done that, after you have got your notes from Empathize, you've got to understand them a little bit more. Okay, you know them as a person, I guess. But you also have dug a little bit deeper and you found out some more motivations behind them. And behind, say, again, if we're using our theme of home learning, you know, what they think about that. What you want to do now is you want to kind of capture those findings. Okay, so we're starting to define, we're defining here what is the issue you think you can solve for this person. So I've got it, again, in two little categories here. I've got it in needs and insights. Okay, so needs should be verbs, right? Like there should be something really, really simple. Then we've got down here, you know, like basically things, what do they want to do? You know, they want it to be faster, they want it to be easier, they want it to be more streamlined, they want, I don't know, whatever they want. That is in their needs. And their insights are things that you are learning basically about your user as you go through here. So not necessarily a need, but just an interesting thing that you found out. Like maybe you, a little insight might be, well, you know, you find that this teacher is struggling talking to a screen. Okay, they find that really weird because they're not getting any feedback from their students, right? They're struggling just seeing faces. You might think that's an interesting insight. Another interesting insight could be something like internet, right? Like, so the reason why they're struggling with home learning is that their internet at their house it's not the best, and it's not their fault, right? So they're really struggling with the technology. Okay, these are things I think that are interesting insights to have as you start to kind of solve these problems here. Now I'm going to just double check chat that everything's going okay. Would you like us to put our insights in here in chat? Yeah, sure, let's go nuts. So there, that chat there, if you want to keep kind of putting some stuff through there, go crazy. But like I said, this is going to be a bit of an overview, and then it's going to be up to you to kind of like explore this as you go. Robbie's in chat as well. Robbie's obviously from the tech school, so if he has any interesting things that he wants to add in there, feel free to dump it in the chat. All right, let's go on to our next session here. So we'll skip past this. All right, so now we get into ideate. Okay, so we have empathized. We've got to know our user. Okay, we've dug a little bit deeper and found some interesting needs and insights from them, right? And then, actually, I probably should go back to define. Then what we want to do is we want to actually, I'm going to have to move one of these counters because that shouldn't be there. I'm going to edit these slides as we go. I'm going to get out of that. All right. So someone's been playing with my slides. Let me just change these as we go. Here we go. All right. So I'm just going to go back into present. Okay. So once you have figured out basically what you think your user needs, we're going to write that down. Okay. And that's called a problem statement. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at all those needs and insights, okay, understand our user a little bit more, and now we're going to actually kind of write down what we think their problem is, okay? So I've got it down here in three little spots. My user, needs a way to, and because, all right? So what we want to have here is we want to kind of get this one, I guess I've said short, specific, and stylish statement, right? Like we want to have this one line from what your user's problem statement is. So, you know, my user, Robbie, needs a way to, and I might say something like, needs a way to, and again, it all depends on what you found out with your user, but it could be my user, Robbie, needs a way to be able to, you know, get greater feedback from his students. Okay, he's not getting any feedback when he's doing his home learning sessions. He's putting out the information, he's putting all these resources out there, but he's not really knowing if his students are taking it in and any feedback from that. And so that's what my user Robbie needs. And because, you know, because he wants to be able to make his teaching better, he wants to be able to look at what he's getting, look at what he's giving his students, and be able to do a better job. You know, and you can't do that without getting that feedback from students. So there's your problem statement. Okay, so that's based upon those things that came before it. It's based upon your empathy, getting to know your user. It's based upon then, you know, having a chat with them and digging a little bit deeper. It's then defining what that problem is. Okay, and then we kind of write it down. All right, so let's go to our next stage. Okay, so once we've done that, once we've got our problem, okay, well, we've written down our problem statement. Now we want to solve it. Okay, so before we can build the thing that's going to solve it, what we need to do is we need to come up with some ideas. Now, I've got these as being radical ideas, right? So with these ideas here, we want to go for volume, right? We want as many ideas as possible, okay? So don't stress about following through on an idea. Just put it down on paper, okay? We don't want you to be restrained by reason or logic, right? We just want an idea. We want as many ideas as we can get, as crazy as they are, because we want to start working from there, okay? So what you're going to do is just sketch those ideas out. I'd rather you sketch them than write them. I like the idea of drawing, even if it's just stick figures, right? Like if you can start to draw your ideas, it's going to solve this problem. I think that's really helpful, especially if your user has to look at those images and kind of interprets them a little bit differently. Okay, so come up with as many ideas as possible that's going to solve your problem. So again, if I go back to what we're doing, Robbie's trying to get that feedback from students. What are some ideas that could solve that problem, right? A simple one, they could just, he could have some kind of, online form that students fill out after a session and then he gets their responses, right? Kind of boring, but, we could do that. Maybe we have, he's going to strap them up with some kind of, heart monitoring device. Then as he's teaching his students, he's getting this active feedback on how they're feeling and how they're thinking. And I'm just making stuff up, right? But as many ideas as possible that could solve that problem. And you're going to sketch them out there. All right, excellent. I'm just looking at the time. All right, cool. So we've got a little bit longer to go. From there, what we want to do is, I'm just going to jump across here. I'm going to skip a couple of those. Now, we're then going to kind of like reflect and refine these ideas. Okay, so I've got iterate based on feedback. So now you've got all these ideas. What you want to do is, go back to that empathy phase, and you want to then kind of show these ideas to your user if you can. Show them all the ideas that you've come up with. All right, you're not a salesman or anything here, right? Like all you're doing is just showing them the ideas, and you're saying, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Okay, and they will tell you, hopefully honestly, they will say, well, this idea is terrible, okay, or this idea is amazing. And again, let's go back to that, I guess the why question a lot. All right, because why do you not like my idea? Why do you think this is great? Because what you're going to start doing is you're going to start jotting that down. So this is all, I guess, an empathy stage as well, right? You're getting to know this person more, even just by them looking at your drawings, right? Your ideas. So you're going to start to kind of show them all their ideas and get some feedback from that. And then from that feedback, you're going to either refine the original idea that you had, okay, out of all those ideas. Maybe one was the best. You might refine it a little bit based upon the feedback you got from your user there. Or you might have to come up with a whole new one, right? Like you might take bits and pieces. Maybe you show them 10 ideas and they liked, a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this one. You might combine all of those, okay, and make a whole new idea or a whole new product that you could start to work with, okay? So that is our ideate phase, all right? And again, obviously I'm blasting through this super, super fast, but you will do this over the course of, if you're doing the teacher PD over the course of 3 hours or a day. Ideally, students will do it over the course of 1 day or even 3 days, depending on what program they choose. So a lot of time goes into these processes as we go. Okay. After you've done that, after you have kind of like you're happy with one of your ideas, right? You've set it on an idea. You have share that with your user. You've refined that based upon their feedback, and here's the idea this is the idea you want to make, right? This is the one that you think is going to solve that problem. Then you make it, okay? Then we start to build it, okay? So if you're in the tech school, what you would do is you might just grab some cardboard and some sticky tape and make a real rough prototype. You might even just sketch it out and draw it, okay? And once you've done that, you might take your cardboard and test it out. You're jumping forward to the test phase. You might see how it works and go, I kind of like this. Let's move it on a little bit. And then you might grab some Lego, right? Or you might grab some little coding bits and start to put those together. You might grab a couple of robots and code those to do something. You might, design something in Illustrator and cut it out on a laser cutter and start to put it together. But that's what this prototyping phase is. It's building it, okay? So building your idea, making it tactile. You want to be able to kind of like put it in someone's hands, okay? And I guess the thing to stress with prototype as well is it is a prototype, all right? So it's not a completed, finished working version. You might have aspects that work. You might have certain parts of it that work fine. Maybe just the design of it is finished, but the actual function is not there yet. And all of that is fine, okay? You just want to have an example, a prototype of how this is going to work. So you're going to build that up, and so you'll have plenty of time to do that. Again, depending on the program you're doing, maybe you've got a day to build, maybe you've got 3 or 4 days to build. Okay, but you're going to build this actual idea into something that's tangible. Now, of course, a lot of ideas could be something like we've had a lot of ideas, and it comes down to like they want to make an app, right? They're going to have an app that's going to solve this problem, which is fine. Obviously, you might be able to build an app in an hour or two. So that's where, again, your prototype phase might be a whole bunch of post-it notes. I know we had this really elaborate app that one of the industry people made where they had an iPhone, like a cardboard iPhone, and they had almost like 50 post-it notes, and they were like ripping the post-it notes off as they were explaining it, kind of almost like a stop motion of how it worked, right? Still a prototype, still really, really cool. So that's your building stage. All right. So then we've let's have a look where. Should have gone and checked my slides. But then after that, there's a test phase, which for some reason is not on my slides anymore. There's a test phase as well, obviously. So that's where you're going to test out your prototype. Okay, make sure it works. make sure it's ready to go. I should have done that on my slides here. I should have tested them out and made sure they were all there. I'll do that for the next slide. But yeah, so then you've got your testing phase as well, okay, where you test out your prototypes and make sure that they're working. All right. So once you've done that, all right, you might want to then go back. Okay, you've tested it out. You've found that certain things work or certain things don't work. You can present it to your user and get some feedback from it. Okay, and you keep kind of going back and forth through that design thinking phase. Okay, until you get something that you're really, really, I guess, really happy with, and you think it's a viable solution. All right, so I'll jump forward a little bit into this one here. So this is a little bit different. So this, I guess, is kind of something that we add as well in the tech school. All right, is that idea of, I guess, pitching, that idea of presenting your idea to and your prototype to your user, okay, or even to the whole class. So what we want to do here is we want you to present your idea, I guess, start to build a little bit of those skills in presentation, and speaking to people, speaking in public, those kind of things, which are a little bit tricky. We want the students to start to do that as well. Okay, so they're going to go back, they're going to talk about their process. As you go through here, we ask them to reflect a little bit, reflect on what they've done, what worked, what didn't work, those kind of things as well. We get them to do a bit of a team reflection, all right, and then a bit of an individual reflection too. So we really want them to kind of think about that process and what they did and how it went, and then kind of talk about that. And then what they'll do after they've done all of that is they will, put together a bit of a presentation for their user and for the class. So they will talk about their idea. They'll talk about, how they came to that idea. They'll talk about their prototypes. They'll talk about some of the prototypes that worked, some that didn't work. All right, talk about their entire process as to why they created this thing that they created, and they will share that. And again, gather feedback. So that whole process is about gathering feedback. Hearing from their user again what they think of their product, hearing from the class, getting some ideas, and then they might have a ripper idea that they can then start to refine a little bit more, or they might have to go back to the drawing board. And yeah, so that is kind of it. That's a quick overview. And look, I did it in half an hour. That's a super quick overview of design thinking. So what I want you to do, I might edit these slides a little bit and make a couple of changes to them, and I will send a link, and I'll put a link in this video. I'll probably do it in a couple of minutes after I'm finished chatting with you. And I want you to kind of go through these slides, okay? Have a look at how they work, and try and do this yourself, okay? Try and go through this design thinking phase and go through these stages, okay? Again, pretty hard to do when it's by yourself, okay? So maybe if you, have a partner at home, maybe you want to use them as the person that you're going to interview, right? Think of, I think of a topic that you want to explore with them, right? Maybe it's like doing the dishes. I don't know. I always get in trouble for doing that, right? Maybe you want to talk to your partner about doing the dishes, right? And find out how you can solve that problem. If they're not doing the dishes, right, there's a reason why. What is that problem? Okay, so maybe we can use design thinking to find out a way to solve the problem to get them to do the dishes, all right? So again, you'll interview them, you'll chat with them, you already know them, which is great. Maybe you'll dig a little bit deeper, ask them some questions. Why is it, Daniel? Why don't you do the dishes? Why do you always have the dishes, piled up? So then when you grab the bottom dish, everything falls. What is the reason behind that? Are you lazy? Are you in a hurry? Can you just not see the dishwasher there? Like, obviously, I'm, thinking about my own life here. But yeah, so maybe use that as an example that you can go through the design thinking process with. Find out what's going on with Daniel. Why can't he do the dishes? Dig deeper. All right, and then you might want to then find out my needs and insights. So Daniel needs a way to get those dishes out of the way really quickly. He hasn't got time. Okay, he wants to get it done fast. Some interesting insights. Daniel never had a dishwasher when he was growing up. He had a mother who did all his dishes, so he's just, he's lazy. But yeah, you can kind of go through that process with that. Then come up with a problem statement. Daniel needs a way to, because, dishes. Find out some ideas, like what are some ideas that can solve Daniel's problem here? Maybe he has a little robot that does the dishes for him. That'd be great. Maybe he doesn't use dishes anymore. Everything's on paper plates. Obviously, recycling is important here. So you can kind of go through that and then make a refined solution based upon your feedback. Come up with some prototypes. I want to see some amazing dishing, washing robots. And then try and build that out of some cardboard, right? And then present that to your partner. So again, that's kind of tricky to do when we're at home, but that's kind of the example of what we want you to do through design thinking. So I'll put the links up to these slides in a second so you can check them out, go through them, and see if you can do this process at home. So yeah, that's it. So we're running another session of these later in the week. It hopefully will be a lot more refined than this one, now that I've run a quick one here. So that'll be good. And that's about it. So we had a booking link for this session. If you could book that would be great. I'll also put a survey link up here. I guess after you've done the slides yourself, it's probably better to do that because this session, was a bit more of I guess, a talking session than it was a teaching kind of session, like one-on-one. So what I'll do is I'll just put this survey a link here, and I reckon just complete this after you've gone through the slides. All right, that mustn't be exciting hearing me time. Cool. So I'm just going to put that up there now. All right, so that's a quick session. I'll stop this one now. My throat is really dry actually because I've been talking straight for half an hour. Go through those slides, and yeah, any questions, just let me know. You can put them in the chat down the side there. But that is about it. So I'm going to end this little quick overview and put those links up so you can try them out. In fact, while I'm still talking to you, why don't I put the links up right now? So I'll put these up here because I can obviously change these as we go. So let's just do that. Links to the slides. There we go. Okay, so that is that. So I'm going to end this one. Have a go through those slides, see how you go, and any questions, let me know. Put it in the chat there, and I'll answer them, of course. And yeah, if you want to see the next session later in the week, like I said, I'm just going over this again for people that haven't been able to attend this session here. But it might be a little bit more sharper than this one here. So thanks again, and I will catch you next time. I'm just going to end my stream.